Hi, this is Billie Beene here with another segment of Truth by Billie Beene Special Report. Today's date, January 20, 2023, episode 489 new. This is my third YouTube channel. I have a subscribe button in the lower right corner of my screen. Thanks for like, subscribe, and share on YouTube and Rumble. Some of my sources are God in the Bible, Patriot, Subscriber, Pastor Paul Begley-Mike from around the world, Galactic Talks interview of Jessica, Ariel, Morocco, and Peter the Insider, Alex Mercouris, Israeli News Live with Stephen Ben-Nun, Borzzikman, WION, DPA, Larry Johnson, Benjamin Fulford, Scott Ritter, Dreesen Report, Real Raw News, Judy Byington, ShariRaye, plus Civil War inside the U.S. and Ukraine. Russia and its allied forces prep for World War III. So let's get started. Okay, I have information here from Benjamin Fulford, and he's talking about the Brunson case. And we know inside people, American citizen patriots who are awake understand that we don't have a functioning federal government, not executive branch, nor legislative branch, nor judicial. So now, Benjamin Fulford, he's a Canadian journalist who's lived in Japan for decades. He worked for Forbes for about 20 years, truther. Talking about the Brunson case before the U.S. Supreme Court, and we don't really have a functioning Supreme Court. They haven't met in years. I understand only one out of the original Supreme Court justices is still alive and not at Gitmo, and that's Clarence Thomas. So when we hear this, you know, it could be something being put forth by President Trump and the U.S. military that's allied with President Trump. So at any rate, the Brunson case had to do with an American citizen suing the Senate because in January of 2021, the Senate went around the Constitution and did not give credence to the 100 members of the House of Representatives who were bringing up questions about the November 2020 E. And they certified that the JB actor puppet, whom they would have known was not the real JB, was the President of the United States. So at any rate, this is being pushed down the road. We understand there are about 6 levels of appeal for a Supreme Court case, and it's very likely tied to the changing of the economic system within the United States. January, February, March, this first quarter of the banking system. So, also Benjamin Fulford is bringing out that there's a fake President Trump, and that's the one who was behind the push for the pharma for the arm called Warp Speed. That's being controlled by the deep state Rothschild family. Now, this new thing with McCarthy being made Speaker of the House, and we know the Speaker of the House is the third one in line for the U.S. President. And supposedly, according to Benjamin Fulford and other sources, the game plan, because we are seeing the mainstream media come out with these classified docs, apparently found in JB's garage and other places. But this is being made public. The deep state is orchestrating it. And we understand the deep state inside the U.S. has capitulated to President Trump and the 70% of the U.S. military who is responding to President Trump as commander-in-chief. That's 70%. We still have 30% of the U.S. military who are deep state. All right. So that's going on. So we understand the plan. Because take out JB, KH is not qualified. That means McCarthy. And then there will be new elections under Jassara that correlates to the change in the banking system also in the first quarter of 2023. So that's going on. Now we have this. So we have, Larry Johnson. He was with the CIA about 20 plus years, and his primary job was training the U.S. military, and Intel is bringing this out about the promotion of General ShariRaye. And I had mentioned in my last video that I agreed with Greg Hunter. This was somehow a move up for General ShariRaye. Well, Larry Johnson is bringing this information out, as is Alex Mercouris, a truther journalist from Greece. Okay. That he was made commander-in-chief of the Russian aerospace forces and the army. And so that's going on. Yeah. It's good to know people pick up on different things. So, yeah. And Alexander Christoforo says General Gerasimov and General ShariRaye were added a general level to prepare for a major offensive. Yeah. So that's going on. Now we have this. Galactic Talk interviewed Jessica Ariel, Marrocco, and Peter the Insider. Peter is the director of the 12th Division of the ACIO, Alien Contact Intel Organization. That's a division of the U.S. federal government, NSA. And he's bringing out this information that China, the CCP part, here's China, we have Chairman Z, we have the CCP, and we understand the CCP is under the control of ETs, well, that's the deep state, and AI. And they are bringing and shipping on ships to the U.S. inside shipping containers, which can be 20 feet, 40 feet, 46 feet. I see intercontinental ballistic missiles. So I have a question there with regard to size, fitting into this size. So some type of missile, I would say a missile. And Peter says they have nuclear warheads. And so the missile has a nuclear warhead, plus it has chemical and bio weapons attached to it. Now, Peter brought this information out a few months ago, and that correlated to information I had from God. That was about the pineapple. Yeah. Some kind of pineapple weapon. And so what I got from God was, this was a symbol, and this had to do with a bioweapon, and like, I think 4 variants. So this was correlated to me from God when I asked him about it. So this kind of works together with this new information coming out from Peter the Insider. Now, Stephen Ben-Nun with Israeli News Live, formerly with the CIA, now as the ministry, gets information from the Pentagon, probably last year, talked about the containers, and he showed video of them. So the shipping container is like this, and what Stephen showed was they could lift their lid, and then out of it comes a launcher that could then launch a missile. So that's known. All right. Now, we have this. We have civil war within the U.S. so-called government, but we understand Washington, D.C. has been empty since January of 2021. JB is an actor puppet avatar for the deep state who uses green screens, typically at a studio now located in Atlanta, Georgia at Fort McPherson. KH is also an actor puppet. The Senate and the House has not met. They're actually filming also in Atlanta, Georgia at Fort McPherson. Everything's fake. Okay. So now this Lloyd Austin, I did some checking, and it's questionable if this is the real one. It's believed now he's a clone actor double, supposedly a retired Army 4-star general. But the information is it's not the real Lloyd Austin. And supposedly this Lloyd Austin put out a bounty of $10 million to the shadow CIA to kidnap Marine General David Berger, who works for the White Hats and reports to President Trump as recognized as being the commander-in-chief. Now, this Lloyd Austin's government position is Secretary of Defense. But as I said, my research reveals, excuse me, no one believes it's the real Lloyd Austin. It's also a fake double. Now, so what happened is, and this information comes from Real Raw News, ShariRaye, Judy Byington, Rumor Mill, and other sources. Okay, General David Berger, Marine, who's been in charge of several things that have gone on to take down the deep state, was in, California, Camp Pendleton, and this happened, I believe, January about 6th. Here's Nevada. He was kidnapped by Shadow CIA. Now he left Camp Pendleton and he was driving, I guess, home or errands or whatever. 6C Shadow CIA accosted him. It was on a desert road, so there was no more traffic there. Now, General Berger recognized that he was being attacked, and he killed several of the CIA individuals, but they were able to come around him, I believe, and use some kind of dart to paralyze him. Their instructions were they could torture him, but they were to keep him alive, kidnap him and keep him alive. Apparently, this Shadow Lloyd Austin, working for the deep state, wanted some kind of information from him. And they took him 600 miles to some kind of ranch that was still inside California on the border with Nevada. I think the name of that place was Cedarville. Okay. Then, after about 5 to 6 days, a whistleblower came out from the CIA. There are still some good people with the CIA and FBI to give information to the Marines, and they were also doing cyber, using computer systems to pick up any chatter about a kidnapping. So then they picked up the information of where he was, and special forces went in. They took down they overcame a guard who then, the CIA whistleblower gave information about the safe house, the layout, but he did not know the code to the security system to get in. So the special forces went in. They overcame the CIA guard, forced him to punch in the code. Then they got inside the house. And during the, it was about 5 or 6 days, they had General Berger inside this safe house. What they did, they paralyzed him. He couldn't communicate. They took all his communication devices away, put him in a van. They took him to the safe house. They took him upstairs, tied him up. And over the 5 or 6 days, they were systematically torturing him. They shattered both of his kneecaps, tried to pry one of his eyes out. He was covered with bruises and cuts, burns. Okay, so that had been going on. So then the special forces got inside the house, and they there were 5 CIA agents there, 1 outside and 4 inside. So they took control of the 1 outside and tied him up, got him to punch in the code. They arrested him. The other 4 inside they killed. And they rescued General Berger, and he's now under medical care. So that's going on. Yeah, Cedarville. 600 miles, which is located 600 miles from Camp Pendleton and 10 miles from the Nevada border. Yeah, and General Smith with the Marines was in charge of the rescue. Now, yeah, and General Smith sent a recon platoon. First, they went by Osprey to get eyes on the safe house, and then they were able to go in and rescue General Berger. So this is another example of the civil war that's going on inside the United States, inside both the government and the military. So that's going on. Now, WION, which is the mainstream out of India, says Zelensky says to the U.S., send us more money and weapons. And so the U.S. has pledged $2.5 billion more in military aid just a few days ago. One deep state to another deep state. Now we have this. Inside Ukraine, there's also civil war. Stephen Ben-Nun with Israeli News Live, and also inside Ukraine, Russell Bentley was also another source for this. And we heard recently that the Minister of the Interior of Ukraine, plus his aides, allegedly Russia shot down a helicopter and killed was 9 individuals on the helicopter, and then they hit a daycare and took out some children and other people, about 9. However, this was an inside job. It was an example of civil war inside Ukraine. What happened was the U.S. has so far sent almost $50 billion to Ukraine, but it had been washed through FTX, and then some of it went to the Ukraine military generals. Some came back to the U.S. to be used by the D Party, because it takes for the November 2022 election, takes a lot of money to pay off the people who are doing the counting. And then FTX went bankrupt. But at any rate, and the U.S. politicians and the 30% of the U.S. military who support the deep state. Okay, so that had been going on. Now, the minister of the Ukraine Interior, and that means like the police forces, wanted their share of the slush money that the Ukraine military generals were getting. And the generals paid him one time, and then they decided, no, we're going to take him out. And it was the Ukraine military using a U.S. Stinger missile. And this information comes from Jacob Dreesen, a retired U.S. Army military analyst, that it was a U.S. Stinger that took down the helicopter inside Ukraine that was fired by the Ukraine military and the U.S. military advisors inside Ukraine. And they took down the Ukraine government minister of Interior. It's all about money. It's all about civil war. Inside the U.S. government, the U.S. military, inside Ukraine's government and Ukraine's military. So that's going on. And Stephen Ben-Nun says, yeah, the Ukraine Minister of Interior was taken out mafia style by his own, compatriots. All right. And also the U.S. weapons are being sold on the black market by the Ukraine generals. Like, we're surprised. Yeah. And the money goes back also to the shadow U.S. military aligned with the deep state inside the U.S. All right. Yep, that's going on. Now, Scott Ritter commenting on World War III being staged before our eyes, says the U.S. has no diplomats. They are not reaching out to Russia for peace or peace talks. Of course not. The deep state, the shadow government inside the U.S. right now, the shadow U.S. military, they want war. They make money from it. Okay, that's going on. And now we have this. All right, so here is Russia. Here is Ukraine. And we know that was the Donbass, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson. These are now part of Russia. And we've got Crimea down here, Belarus right here. Now, recently along this front line, there have been some significant battles. Soledar, Bakhmut, and what we're hearing is that as many as possible 25,000 Ukraine plus military were killed. And we know now, there are tens of thousands of U.S. military inside Ukraine fighting. NATO and militaries from other NATO nations, the UK, England, Poland, and so forth. Okay. Now, what happened recently, though, is that a missile was launched from Belarus. And Belarus is also engaged as an ally and part of the allied forces for Russia. So Russia, Belarus, China, Iran, which Mike from Around the World says Iran has a military of 100 million. He says that the Middle Eastern nations all have these large underground bases, and maybe that's why Elena Kopolnik was bringing that information out recently about the Black Ops located underneath the Blue Ridge Mountains in the U.S. That was in my previous video. All right. Now we had also another location was Marinka, where there were also significant dead for Poland. 1,200 were killed by Russia and their allied forces near Donetsk. This has all happened in the last week or so. Yeah. And we have this. We have War News 24/7 and Hal Turner. On January 14, Russia launched 80 missiles from warships. They were in the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea over here. They also had planes in the air. They also had drones. And this is when, on January 14, a new type of missile was fired, a new type of Iskander, and it was fired from Belarus on Kiev. Now, on January 13, 25,000 Ukraine are killed, right here. January 12, Russia had moved all their warships and submarines out of Russia and ostensibly to go here to Odessa to take out to maintain a seaport, Odessa. Now we have DPA is reporting Zaporizhzhia. The Russian military plus their allied forces are making moves now to take out, move in this area for an offensive. Zaporizhzhia. And we have Klichiva has fallen. This is being reported by a news source I have, Borzzikman. And also has fallen Soledar and Bakhmut. And in this area, we have a private group called Wagner that worked for the Russian government. And the U.S., according to Borzzikman, has declared war on this private group, the Wagner group. So we see, and also weather is going to be a factor. When I ask God, what's going on with war, the economy, the government, God said, keep your eyes on the weather. So in my next weather segment, I'll do more updates. Now, in terms of weather in Ukraine and the World War III, and make no mistake about it, that's what's coming probably within the next month, is part of their plan has to do with very freezing and below freezing weather coming and solidly freezing the ground to facilitate tanks and heavy equipment. So we'll keep our eyes on that. But for sure, right now, Russia and its allied forces have grouped and staged. They're putting in place different generals to take control of certain aspects of the war effort. And this is war against NATO, the UK, England, and the US, who have aligned themselves and have come out from the shadows where they were taking the position that they were only helping Ukraine, and now it's clear Ukraine was simply a proxy for NATO. So that's going on. So a short prayer. This is part of the Key series. It's based on the King James Version, 1 Chronicles, Isaiah. All right. The priests of God have keys that can open the gates of their temples to God. And we understand inside us is our high priest, Jesus, whom many call Yeshua, who is our stargate and direct contact to God the Father. And Jesus, whom many call Yeshua, carries the key of the house of David, the key of the governments of the world upon his shoulder. He shall open and none shall close. He shall close and none shall open. And we say, O Lord, be gracious to us, you who are our salvation in time of trouble. Our God reigns. He brings wisdom and knowledge to be the stability of our times. He brings peace to all nations. But to our enemies, he brings fire from heaven. He devours and destroys our enemy. And we say, bring it, Father. And we thank you, Father God, and God the Son, Jesus, whom many call Yeshua, and God the Holy Spirit. Amen. And I say to my family and friends, remain steady out there. Continue to pray. God is in charge, and he is on the move. I love you, and I'll see you soon.